Well, hello, beekeepers. I'm Ricky Rourke with Horizontal Bees. I appreciate everybody that's here tonight, and we should have a few other people coming on a little bit later. And I want to talk a little bit today about hive equipment. And so I got Kent here with us. He's a gentleman that had bee class with, and we'll go over a little bit of that more here in a few minutes. Also want to introduce Spanky here. So I've asked Spanky to be a co-host with us on our channel, and Spanky, I appreciate that. And some people don't really know what your true name is, so I'm going to butcher it right now. It's Larry Reuben Malam. Is that right? The second?
Yeah, Milam.
Milam. Okay. See, I said I'd butcher it up. So, but a little bit about Spanky. He's made a lot of the 3D horizontal hives for me. He's also done my blueprints for us to sell on our website. And something else that people might not know, he's got some mad garden skills, let me tell you. He can grow watermelons. He's helped me with, maybe some sourwood trees, and had some really good conversations with him when we went up to Ohio. But he, as Lee was pointing out before the show started out, that they do a lot of infused honey also, and he makes some spicy honey. So, but tell them just a little bit about yourself, Spanky, if anybody on here doesn't know who you are.
I like to garden. I do some printing. I like the bees, and I enjoy not only the flowers, but a lot of the native stuff. I enjoy a lot of the native flowers as well. Trying to bring those back into the yard and let those grow, because they can help the native animals as well as the honeybees. And then everything seems to do good off of those.
Right.
We were 17 degrees just the other day, and there's still asters out there. I think in New England, and they're still blooming, and the honeybees are all over them.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't think we have anything up here still blooming, do we, Kent? Do you know of anything? I know witch hazel should be blooming here probably any time, but I haven't seen any of it yet. So
Spanky, like local flowers, I was at a garden center a couple of weeks ago, and someone had the nerve to be selling goldenrod for $10 a bucket for 3 little plants in like a gallon thing. It's like for goldenrod.
For goldenrod.
Yeah. There's people selling oak and maple trees for $60, $75 on Facebook Marketplace.
I think I could make $1 million on that goldenrod if I could find enough people to buy it.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
you
for sure.
could. You can sell the seed online. Yep, you can sell those aster seeds too.
Thank you. I've seen your the demos that you've made for Ricky. Those are really cool.
Yeah, Spanky, he's talented with that 3D printing stuff. I mean, and we took some stuff down to the Hive Life conference, and they donated some stuff down there also, and auctioned it off. So, and some blueprints. And to be honest with you, I wanted to buy it. I didn't get to go bid on it because we were just too busy. So, but yeah, Spanky, we appreciate you co-hosting, and Kim, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Talk a little bit about our trip to Alabama. We went down and seen Lisa from House Midwife. Went down, took her a hive to Southern Alabama. Spent some time with her. She's there. She is great lady. She's on a lot of the live chats. She's involved with a lot of us YouTubers. Just a all around really good lady, and I appreciate Lisa getting a hive off of us. And that's that hive there is actually a style that Greg Burns actually designed, and I really like it. I actually made one for myself. So, and then we also met Richie, who's another gentleman, as we went on up the road, and then we met James, and James was disabled, and if I can help people out, I try to go help people out. So we drove out to above Jasper, Alabama, and dropped a hive off to him, and he was a really good gentleman. You see him there. I mean, he's got his little uh, mobile. I guess you call it like a wheelchair, and he can't move that one arm, so having a horizontal hive helps him because he can just open it up with the opposite arm and get in there and look for what he needs. And he called me up and he asked me if I could make him one. We was actually going to go all the way out to Memphis. Is actually where he's from, and he met us halfway, and we dropped that hive off. So we do appreciate him and buying a hive off of us. And if you're hopefully everybody's going to the upcoming Bee Expo. We'll be there at the Bee Expo, and Lee will be one of our people with our group that will help us with our hives while we're there. And when we're at the expo, I really enjoy having people come by and say something. And I've added extra people to my group so that I can kind of take myself away a little bit from trying to sell a hive or talk to somebody about a hive, and I can actually have a good conversation with people. And to me, in beekeeping, there's something about beekeepers that if we kind of connect, and I enjoy talking to people. It brings people together, and just like Ken here, we Ken Jenkins, we actually had a class together, and got to meet Ken in the class, and we grew. We started with the beginner beekeeper class, and I think it was an intermediate, and then an advanced beekeeper class. And you think you know a lot about bees until you take a class. Then I realized how much I didn't know.
Exactly.
A lot on YouTube, but it's amazing what else you can learn, and even asking your master beekeeper that's giving the class questions, and hear him say, "Well, it all depends." So, but Ken, he gave a presentation to us while we was there about his about hive equipment, and so I thought this time of year is a really good time to talk about hive equipment and things that you maybe should build or things you don't want to build. Ken's a great woodworker, and we've got a photo here of some of the stuff that he has built. And I tell you what, it's even prettier in person, to be honest with you. Ken, you do some really good work.
I feel like I'm a beginner.
Well, I know you're not a beginner, even though you might be a beginner beekeeper, but your wood skills are really impressive. So I appreciate you showing us your stuff that you had. So
yeah, you're certainly welcome.
Yeah, let's see. I think I can. There we go. That's some of the stuff that you build. And explain this one right here, that plate right there. Explain to us a little bit about how much work that was involved there.
Yeah, way too much. That's so there's woodworking like you do, Ricky, to build hives. This was all done with a wood lathe, so it's wood turning. And the plate started out as a piece of poplar wood. It's probably 15 inches in diameter, and it's a process called basket illusion. So it's supposed to look like a Native American basket, but it's really just a piece of wood, and it's got probably like 26 different rows of beads, basically. So I had like a little wood beading tool that went around the diameter, and then used a wood burning, pyrography, wood burning pen to burn all these little lines that went to the center. And then you basically take what in essence is kind of like a little Sharpie. It's an India ink pen. And I want to say there were like 3,000 or 4,000 of these little squares that I had to color in to make the pattern.
Wow.
So it was something to do when I was watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune.
Well, that's a good little project to have during the winter when you ain't got nothing That's for sure. So, yeah. So, um, I believe you also. I tell you what. Tell us a little bit about your beekeeping history, Ken,
Okay.
because I think people
As
will be
we
a little
talked about before,
surprised that. Yeah, a little surprised that you're actually probably as you're going to say, you're a new beekeeper, right?
yeah, as new as you can be, just about. uh, yeah, prior to 2021, I had no experience at all. And I know you included, Ricky. When I've talked to you in the past, you talk about you had fond memories of your grandfather doing beekeeping, and it's surprising how many people you talk to they'll have the same memory. And even though my grandfather was into farming and had horses and cows and all that kind of stuff, I don't know that I ever saw a bee hive until I went to my beekeeping class in 2021, which is very odd. I know. I don't even know that growing up, I don't even know that I was a big honey eater. I don't know that we had honey around the house on a regular basis. But when I moved to Ashe County 2 or 3 years ago, that was one of the hobbies I started reading up on, and I thought, well, this seems interesting. I'm really big into like continuous learning kind of stuff, and so this was something that seemed pretty complicated. Beekeeping. I mean, there's a lot. When I started reading and learning about the sociology of the bees and how the queen and how the hive works together, that was really just fascinating to me. That kind of got me hooked. So then I started taking the class with you and our at the local community college. Met a ton of nice people, and it almost came more about the people before I got the bees, because we went to the class before I actually got bees.
Right.
So I guess I'm unusual in that I had no history with bees at all. So I've been this is my going into the second winter for me for beekeeping.
And I think it's really cool is because, a lot of times people don't listen to beginner beekeepers, but you guys, a beginner beekeeper can see something that an older beekeeper might not see. We just take it for granted because we do the same processes over and over and over again. And we're well versed, but a new beekeeper comes with a clean slate, and a lot of times they'll see something that maybe us older beekeepers don't see. And some of your woodworking skills. After I got to seeing some of it, I was like, wow, and I was really excited because you mentioned about building horizontal hive. I was like, I got to see what he's going to build, so I was happy to come out and see that. And speaking of your horizontal hive, can you talk about the horizontal hive that you built? I believe the actual term for this hive is a Lutston. Is that how you'd say that, Ken? Would you?
I don't know. Would you call it that? Because I don't know. I guess the concept is kind of the same as that, right? You're trying to get a brood area that's bigger than the traditional Langstroth hive.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure it's exactly like that, but go ahead and explain your horizontal hive and the ideals that you had that said, hey, I want to try this, and this is the kind of horizontal hive I've decided to build. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the inventions that you've made for this hive also.
Okay. Well, it started out, I started the first year with 2 traditional Langstroth hives, and I quickly realized I probably want to do beekeeping for a long time. So and I realized that, hey, this is pretty heavy. You started getting a whole box of honey. I thought, I don't know that I'll be able to do that when I get to be 75. So,
right.
So then I heard you talk a lot about your different hives, and I started watching your channel. And it seemed like one of the real benefits that a lot of people talked about with the horizontal hives was, hey, there's no more lifting really heavy stuff. So I thought, okay, I might try to build one of those over the winter, because that's a good time to do something like that. And then I started, like everybody else, I went to your website first to start kind of understanding the basics of how to do a horizontal hive and what the key components were. And then I started, like everybody else, I started looking at all these other YouTube stations, and I ran across this guy named David Stout. He's like, at the time, I think he might have been a college-age kid. And he basically had a concept. I think he called it a double deep hive. Mm-hmm. So he had basically 2 Langstroth deep frames that were attached with, I guess, a joint in between the 2, so you can slide them apart.
Right.
And you can actually put those two in your traditional honey extractor. So it helps you keep everything compatible with traditional Langstroth hive, which is one of my goals. I didn't want to have two different systems running at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture of it, if you can imagine. So it's basically giving the queen twice the space to lay in, which is more, I think from the things I've read, Ricky, is supposed to be, it's like a lay-ins hive, right? It's supposed to
give that
mimic
big
nature
brood.
more for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the patterns.
Big brood with the honey. Yeah.
So that's what that's what that was supposed to mimic. And if you can imagine right where that piece of wood going across, you can slide the two pieces apart, and you're basically left with two Langstroth deep frames.
I got a question for you on that.
Yes, Spanky.
Have you tried running those in an extractor?
I did.
Because I noticed on that picture, the bottom one doesn't have the ears.
You are correct.
So I was wondering how that runs in your extractor.
So I have like I think a 4-frame, just round manual extractor. It fits down into some grooves that, I guess it doesn't really need the ears for that.
Yeah. The one I've got, you put the ear down in it, and it holds it.
Yeah.
Yeah, his is going to fit flat against that as it spins around, and you have to actually take that frame and rotate it and slide it back around. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, you have to spin it twice, one for each side. But Spanky, you hit on one of the main problems that I had with this is when you slide them apart, the top frame is exactly like a traditional Langstroth frame, but the bottom one isn't because it doesn't have those ears on it. And this is where I didn't fully appreciate being a one-year beekeeper, what kind of problems that might cause down the road. But when you start trying to share, because now I've got 4 traditional hives, and I got this horizontal hive that has 2 colonies in it. I can't really share resources from my traditional hives with the Langstroth hive because I can't take that bottom part of the frame and put it over there because there's no way for it to be attached. It can't rest in the traditional. So that caused me some problems this year because I had several times where I lost the queen for one reason or another, and I was trying to, get the Langstroth frames over and we try to move Langstroth frames over to your horizontal hive. There's no way to attach a bottom one, so you're left with one deep frame in a space that needs 2 deep frames, and if you leave it like that, they're going to make a mess.
Yep.
So the whole compatibility between those 2 different systems really didn't work out. So I was telling Ricky, I don't know that I would do the double deep again, but I have learned enough. I think I still like the horizontal hive, so I think I probably will build another one of those this coming year.
And I think Dawson on here, he said that we built him one like that. We built a lanced hive in the middle for just the brood nest, and then we did mediums out across the side of it. So it's a really hard hive to build for us, but it gives you the option with the brood nest that you could actually extract the honey out with the frames on the other side. So, or he could put a couple extra colonies in those sides also. So,
but the hive ended up being able to hold, I want to say it's 64 frames double deeps, I think. Mm-hmm. So I have a hard wall right in the middle. So basically I have 2 colonies.
Yeah. Hey Lisa, what's going on? We just talked about you just a few minutes ago about our trip down there. We do appreciate you, and I can't wait till you seeing you get that hive going also. And maybe that Greg Burns hive will get a Greg Burns queen. We'll see. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've built for this. You built this really kind of cool entrance gate with some wire that just kind of slid in. I thought that was really cool. Lee, can you find that, Lee, to pull that up? Let's see. There it is. Thanks, Lee. And that's a little cool invention that you can just kind of slide it over and allows the airflow to go through. I thought that was really cool. Something kind of outside the box. So
yeah, you can't see, but on the wire part on the bottom, every inch or so is a 3/8 inch little gate for the bees to go in. So in essence, that's a mouse guard.
Correct. Yep.
And so I take that off entirely during the summer.
Yep.
So that whole space is open for the bees. And actually, just yesterday, the wind in Ashe County was blowing like 120 miles an hour. So I flipped it the other way around and had the solid part across the entrance, except for a small gap, so the bees could come and go if they needed to. But trying to cut down the wind, get into the hive.
Yeah, Wayne actually called me and told me that one of the guys that's in our bee association had a couple hives to blow over. So I actually took off on Wednesday and set those hives back up for him. So I didn't see no bees in it, but they was probably tucked in there so tight they weren't going to come out regardless. So we did have some heavy winds. So let's see.
So I see somebody else is commenting. Irwin, picking up the frame was pretty heavy.
Yeah, J.W. Irwin here. He's bought a hive off of us. You're gonna get to see this thing at the expo. If you're a military guy, you're gonna want this hive. I mean, it is incredible. I sent him a picture of it, and it's nice. I didn't want to show it all to him, but we've added some extra stuff to it. It looks a lot like Lisa's hive, but it's a military hive. So you guys check that out at the Bee Expo when you come down. And again, anybody that's come in late, come over and talk to me if you get a chance. I enjoy talking about bees. That's why we're doing the live stream. Don't feel shy, or if there's somebody there, just go ahead and come on over. I'm not like Randy the Dirt Rooster. I won't have 100 people around me, but there might just be a couple of people around us. So come on by and talk to us if you don't mind. So, all right.
To JW's point, I'll tell you, even when you take two deep frames and strap them together, that by itself is still kind of unwieldy. If you're trying to do an inspection, right? You're trying to flip it around, be careful. It's not as easy as it might seem.
And that's what you was talking about, those double deep frames. When you was pulling those out, how heavy those were, trying to get them out and move them. So let's talk a little bit about your stripes on your hives.
So I think the advanced beekeeping, I think they need to take the advanced name off of that, Rick, and maybe call it experienced beekeeper or something. I still don't feel like I'm certainly not advanced. But one of the, I think our teacher talked about how bees can actually, you had that phenomenon. If you have your hives really close together, you have bee drift, where some of the returning foragers will end up in the wrong colony. But he talked about there had been some recent studies done that if you have patterns, that the bees could actually recognize patterns of even and odd. And so this was my attempt to basically help the bees find their home back again when they're out foraging. So I've got an odd number of round dots and an even number of stripes, I think, basically just trying to distinguish the two entrances.
Right. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if my reading is correct, I think bees can count to 3, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. They could definitely tell the difference between odd and even, and that's
right.
Yeah,
to me, that's crazy. I mean,
they also use them for sniffing out explosives.
Right. And I think I've seen a thing where they do the same thing with cocaine. So when they stick their tongues out, they give them honey, so they'll stick their tongues out, and it actually hits a sensor. So then they also put cocaine out at the same time, so they can smell that cocaine, and they're sticking their tongues out. And then they won't give them honey, and they'll just do the cocaine, and they'll stick their tongues out. So it sets off the gun, and they can detect cocaine that way, which is really cool. So what did you say, DC? They can count to 4? Okay. Appreciate that, DC. So,
I think the backstory to all that is they're a lot smarter than we realize yet, and there's a lot more they can do than we know. Exactly.
100%. And let's talk about with this hive design that you got. You actually clip the corners on these the foundation, and when you're doing a bigger, like a lance hive, you really need to clip these corners so the bees can roll around, because your hive is sealed across the top. There you go. Right. And they have to be able to get around to the other side. So that's a very good way to do that. So in a natural hive, those entrances will be there in those. So
And I tell you, Ricky, I know we talked about in the class, building your own hives is not, I don't think it's a money-saving venture. I don't think you're necessarily going to save a lot of money unless you just have a lot of materials laying around. One of the reasons I did it was I was trying to, since I had not been around bees a lot before, and the class was just so much information that I was trying to find a way to kind of practice what I knew. So for example, the whole concept of bee space, right? Bees got to have 3/8 of an inch to get around. Well, the fact of when I built those hives, I had to take that into consideration in the design of the hives, and so it just made that sink in more for me. And to your point about having the edges clipped, thinking through, they got to be able to get from one side to the other. Since this design, the top is kind of sealed up. So to me, it was really more of a way to start, I guess, internalizing what we learned in class.
Correct. Yeah. And then I think on your horizontal hive, you used, I think, like Jim Rass, our master beekeeper here in Ashe County, you put like a cloth across the top of that to allow it's kind of like your barrier, correct? And they propylize that really. There you go. Propylize that really.
We called it a manipulation cloth, and that was one of the things that I didn't. That's another example I didn't really understand. I heard what he was saying, but I don't know that I really understood the benefit of it. But you can only, if you can pull it back, if you're only going to look at the first, or when you're looking at the first 2 frames, let's say, you can pull that cloth back just to uncover the first 2 frames. And so it doesn't really upset, the rest of the hive stays dark. It doesn't really upset the other bees as much as if you're taking the box off the entire top.
Right. And that's just another way. I mean, like during winter, you can put you've got that blanket in there, but then you can put another blanket on top of that and really insulate the top of that hive. So that really does work out fairly well. So,
and we were talking about, I still not quite sure how I'm going to feed them like pollen patties and stuff like that over the winter. I guess would it be reasonable just to put it under that manipulation cloth?
I don't see why not, but I'll be honest with you, my Lance hive died on me, and I didn't repopulate it this year. So, I fed mine sugar water and pollen patty at the end of the year, and they made comb with it with the sugar water and didn't have no honey. And I thought they were fine, and they froze out last year. So, but I'm sure putting pollen patty on that probably be okay. So
I take
that hive was pretty strong too, right?
Oh yeah, I ended up, because I lost a queen late in the year. I thought I lost. I ended up combining both of the colonies that were in that hive, so it's super strong. So I have high hopes for them. I guess the other difference, and I'm hoping it works out, is my because the wind does blow so much where Ricky and I live, and it's pretty cold in the mountains. I mean, that was like 17 one day last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And this is in November. I typically had, for my traditional frames, I had my traditional hive. I have like insulation around that blue insulation board. I've made like a wrap for it. And since the long hive is made out of, or horizontal hive is made out of 2x material instead of 1x material, I'm hoping I'm not going to try any additional insulation. I hope that doesn't cause a problem.
I think you'll be fine. I really don't even insulate my my regular vertical hives that I have here. I don't insulate them. So, really? But I do think there's advantage to it, insulating them, especially if you're not got your bees in a place that there's a good wind break. And I know where your house is at. That wind rolls across that ridge right there pretty heavy. So
yeah, we're kind of on the top of a ridge line. So yeah, it's yeah, I've not experienced wind like this except in a storm before I moved here. I got to tell you.
Yeah. so
let me ask. You're safe down there off the mountain, though, aren't you?
Yeah, Spanky's good on down there in Lenore. It's not quite so windy, is it, Spanky?
I'm on the foothills. It was pretty windy the other day.
Oh, was it windy down there too? Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, Ken, some pros and cons of this horizontal hive that you have seen now. Some things that you think that with your hive or with any horizontal hive that you might see that won't work. And I'll say this, that a horizontal hive is not for everybody. I think it's more for backyard beekeepers. It's a good resource hive. It's a good hive, to make you some honey. But it's not for everybody. So if you don't mind, elaborate on that just a little bit.
So I still think the weight issue to me is like one of the number one things. I can see me working with this hive longer than I can, longer into old age than I can just a regular set of hives. And I'm exactly the kind of person you just described. I'm not trying to make money at honey. I'm not trying to sell honey. I just give it to people that I like. So I'm not trying to maximize my honey production or anything like that. So I think it is really nice just to be able to open one lid and you're in, and there's no sitting boxes on the ground and worrying about the queen getting lost. There's none of that. Everything is more, when you're inspecting it, it seems like everything is more, it's safer from a standpoint of losing the queen or something bad happening. So I think that's good. Using the whole manipulation cloth, I don't know that I would have done that with the regular hive. You could, I guess, but I do like the way it kind of isolates only the part of the hive that you're disturbing. It seems to keep the bees from, that certain time of the year when they're kind of angry anyway. It seems to keep that down a little bit.
Right.
Do you have hive beetles up there real bad?
I hadn't, the first year, Spanky, I saw no hive beetles, but when I did my final inspection, like in September, when I pulled that cloth back, I did see 2 or 3 running around. So
do they build corrals up there?
After I saw that, our teacher or professor told us about the whole thing. If you take these Swiffer pads and cut them up into little squares, the hive beetles will get something about their leg gets stuck in that filament and ends up being basically in essence a trap. I don't know that I had a problem per se, but I did see some for the first time there.
Yeah, I was just curious if they would make corrals, because I see a lot of propolis on that.
Yeah, and I don't know, Spank, if that's the bees. I caught those bees were swarm bees from somebody else. And they had a lot more propolis than my other bees did. So I don't know if it was just the nature of the bees or if it was the nature of the hive, really. It's kind of hard to know.
Yeah, Ken, do you make YouTube videos? You have a channel?
No. Although I'm thinking about starting a channel for a wood turning club we have in Ashe County. So
okay. Yeah.
So I think those are a couple of the benefits. The downside to me is more related to it being the double deep, not just the whole concept of it not being as interchangeable as I thought. And I don't know, being a new beekeeper, I didn't realize the implications of that. And it kind of messes up your ability to manage your whole collection of hives if 2 of your colonies are a little bit different. So I probably would do something different there. I probably would have just gone with a more traditional horizontal hive. But sometimes, I don't know how you are, Ricky, sometimes when I start building something, I say, well, if this is good, then bigger's got to be better, right? So
that's what y'all should think, right? Yeah.
I got caught up in that a little bit, I think.
Well, I mean, you say, well, I can put more bees in here and I can do more frames. And, we've made hives up to 6 feet long. And I'll be honest with you, I'll tell people they're not going to fill that whole hive up. Not one
this
column.
is like 55 inches, I think was the length of mine. Another problem I had, I don't know if it was because it was a long hive, but I took a traditional queen separator and just put a wooden frame around it. And I put it between where I wanted the brood box to be, the first 5 or 6 frames. And then what in essence would be your second box on a traditional. And they just made a mess of that. They covered the majority of the queen excluder. They just started treating it like another frame, and it was a mess. So they could still get through, but a lot of it they drew out comb on it and had honey, and so it was a mess to extract that.
I see Paul on there from Hell's Hive. We built him a horizontal hive, and he had little porches for every one of his hives. It was a Cavanna, basically. It looked really, really cool. And I'm like him. I've got 3 nukes overwinter in one hive right now. It's our queen rearing hive that we did earlier in the season, and they're doing really, really good with that heat, distribution for 3 little colonies heating each other up. So it's working really, really well. So
that was the other. I was hoping there would be a benefit. I thought if you got 2 hives really that close together, you're right. That's going to generate a lot more heat. I would think.
Heat, yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. So. So let's look at some of your other hives that you have. Lee, can you pull up some of his vertical hives that he's got? So you got 4 vertical hives there, and they all of them did good this year for you.
The 2 on the ends, one on each end, are the ones I started with my first year, and then the 2 in the middle are the ones I started with my second year. So yeah, beekeeping can be humbling too, right?
Yes, it can. Very quickly, it can.
The burgundy hive was my strongest hive. It produced the majority of the honey I had the first year, whereas the Carolina blue hive, it just kind of limped along the whole year. And ended up requeening the blue hive, and then it took off, and so it's strong now. The 2 middle hives are ones that I caught. I actually built some swarm traps, and I caught a neighbor's bees. I think they weren't my bees, but they were. I noticed I've got a neighbor probably a couple miles down the road, and so I had a couple of swarm traps in the community, and I caught a couple of swarms. So everything was. So the ones in the middle, the swarm bees are doing really good. The one that says Queen Elizabeth there, which was my strongest hive, they just absconded at the end of August. They were doing good, but then all of a sudden they were just, not a bee left. I don't know. And I don't know what happened.
And that's what happened to me. One of my strongest vertical hives that did the best all year, all of a sudden I look up and it's being robbed out, and I'm like, well, what's going on? My mites were low all year. Everything was looking good, and next thing you know, they had either absconded or those colony collapse. I don't know, but it got totally robbed out. So, and that's part of
responsibility for mine probably. I since they were my strongest hive, and I had a couple of cases during the year where I'd lost a queen, so I would take resources out because it's my strongest hive. So I took resources out of it, and I think they got tired of that. They got tired of being the resource hive, so they went somewhere else.
They said, "That's enough of that, buddy. We're not sticking around this area no more." So, yeah.
So, which is one of my goals this coming year is to establish a more formal process to have a resource hive that you can just focus on, just them being like an emergency queen rearing hive and things like that.
Right. So I see your workshop back there. I think I've got a photo of your workshop back there, and I'm a little jealous of how nice that workshop is. I got to see it and walk around in it, and I'm like, wow, this is kind of what I aspire to be like when I get my shop done here. And you really did give me some good ideas of how to set something up like that, and I like the ventilation system there. I
will tell you, Ricky. It doesn't take very much to if you're interested in building your bee equipment just because you want to learn more about it. All it really takes is a table saw, a drill, and some wire cutters. A staple gun helps. I don't know, and a paintbrush.
In a paintbrush,
a square. I don't know that you need. You don't really need a whole bunch of fancy equipment.
Correct. And that gets us into what I really brought you on here is it's wintertime right now. And, you give a really good presentation in class about, what things as a beekeeper should we build versus what we should buy. And, that's why I want you to talk a little bit about on here. And, you got Lee's pulling up Paul's hive. Look at that right there. He sure did want a fancy hive. That thing turned out nice. Again, there's some of the hives that I build that I like. I just wish I could keep. And when you build something like that, that's one of them. So, and you know that building your stuff. So
does each one of those porches, does that represent a separate colony?
Yeah, sure did. Yeah. So different colors, different, Yeah, just give it a different feature with each one of them. So yeah. So that's 6 nukes in that hive. So, and if he wanted to, he could put a divider in and do some queens on those also if he'd like to. So, but again, we give him. So talk a little bit about things that maybe we should build for during winter, or things that we shouldn't build, because there's some things it's just not worth building. And that's what I thought was really good. You talked about that in class. It's like, just buy it off the line. It's just cheaper to do it that way. So go ahead and talk to us a bit about that presentation.
I would say the list of things you shouldn't build is shorter than the things you should. I think the only thing I didn't really build was my frames. Now, when it came to the horizontal hive, I had to build those because that's a custom thing. Nobody's making those. But for my traditional horizontal or my traditional vertical hives, I built everything except the frames. And I realized I could have built the frames, but it's just too many cuts and too many angles. It's just it wasn't worth it. Because was a frame cost like $1 and something, right?
Yeah. Just buying the wood alone for a frame, you're pretty much going to lose out unless you 2x4 and you got to make a bunch of them, right?
So I would encourage your listeners to give it a try. I made a list here, right? The first thing, starting from the ground up, I built a stand. That's a wooden box on legs, right? I mean, you can get fancy, you can sink it in concrete, and you can do all kinds of things, but it's you can keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Get you I think I used a 2x4 and some 4x4 treated lumber. I would imagine they're going to be good for years to go. I'm hoping anyway.
Yep.
Starting at the bottom, you can build a simple. I use a screen bottom board. I use finger joints on most of my stuff, but you don't have to. A lot of the stuff you buy is just butt joints. We're screwed together with a little bit of glue. Yep. Depends on. I used the finger joints just because I was trying to practice that in case I want to start doing some box making for something else. Just trying to build my woodworking skills. Then so I had a screen bottom boards, and I built slatted racks. That's one of the things our teacher talked about. I know all beekeepers don't use that, but it's an extra 2 or 3 inches of space for the bees to kind of get out of the weather with the wind that's coming in through the entrance. It gives the bees a separate space to kind of hang out. It's not in the comb area.
I guess you don't have a picture of those slatted racks, do you?
I don't think.
I didn't
check online. It's pretty easy to find some plans online.
Are you building them where they follow your frames? They're in line?
Yeah.
Have they ever built any comb out in those?
I tell you, Spanky, in our class, we talked about that, and that was one of the. Most people said no, but there was a couple of people who said, "Oh, I've tried that, and it's a mess." But I hadn't had any problem with that at all, really.
Yeah, I think Jim Rash had said he had one that colony that had built below the those slots and down just a little bit,
And I tell you, the second set of hives that I built, I ended up not doing that just because it was a whole lot of extra steps, and I procrastinated, and it was springtime, and it was time, so I had to move on. And I tell you, one of the things I have noticed is the bees in the colonies that don't have a slatted rack, they are much more likely to be outside and bearding on the side of the colony than the other bees, even though it doesn't get really hot in Ashe County. I have noticed that the bees will be outside the colony a lot more, which to me is proof that it's doing what it's supposed to do, right? It gives them another place. And then the boxes, I think the simple, I can't imagine paying for the boxes. That's just too easy. You're cutting a couple of boards and attaching them. That's just too simple. Then I built some feeder boxes on the top that double as quilt boxes in the wintertime. So it's it's got an entrance in the middle with some number 8 wire where they crawl up and they'll get the sugar water on both sides. And then in the wintertime, I just clean that out and I put burlap in there, and it kind of keeps the condensation from dripping down on the bees. It absorbs in that burlap. Mm-hmm. Then I built some telescoping lids. mostly out of scrap that I had. Our house has a little bit of section where it's got some metal roofing on it that the builder had a bunch of it left. And it's like, I probably find a use for that. The wife wasn't crazy that I was keeping all this stuff around, but eventually I was justified in the end because I found a use for it. What are some other things I made? An escape board, right? When you get ready to start extracting your honey, you're trying to figure out how to keep them out of the top part of the hive. That was really simple.
Have you tried a fume board?
It's kind of like that, where it has basically a hole in the middle, some triangles. It's kind of like a maze for them. So when they're in the top box and they work their way down, they can't find their way back up if you only leave it on for a day or so.
Yeah, a fume board is kind of like a cover that somebody built too small. It doesn't fit. It doesn't telescope. It fits directly.
Right.
And it's got something like a piece of felt or something that'll absorb the spray you use, whether it be Honey Bandit or the Bee Gone, and you spray that, and then you put it on there cockeyed, and the air will go in through the holes. And the idea is, with the airflow, it'll get that scent moving, and it'll make them move down.
With the escape board, that was one less thing I had to buy, though. I didn't have to buy any kind of spray or anything like that. It was a simple matter of putting it on the day before. And I bet you, in the 2 supers I had on top, I probably didn't have half a dozen bees left after like a day. I think if you leave it on there too long, they're pretty smart, right? They'll figure
them out. Some of them they figure out, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing I made, Ricky, was a little jig that you can assemble your frames with, right? It's like a box inside of a box, a frame inside of a frame.
Yeah.
And you take all the pieces and parts of those frames, and it's really easy to do 10 at a time.
Yeah.
Versus if you're just trying to put one together at a time, it's going to be cockeyed every time.
Yep. And you also made some entrance reducers, which is, it's a real simple thing to build. Don't take but a second. Build scrap wood. Build you a bunch of them, because if you're like me, I'm like, where's my entrance reducer at? And I'm looking everywhere for them. So build you a bunch of them so that you have them. So,
but I tell you, at the end of the day, the only thing I really didn't make were for the regular hives was the frames. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, there's a sense of accomplishment to say I did all of that.
Exactly. And that is a lot to it. I mean, some of the cost of building some of that stuff probably wasn't worth your time unless you just like to build stuff. But like you said, you can say when somebody comes here, hey, I built that hive, and if you're passing stuff down, like as a gentleman that gave me some hives, he's like, my grandfather made these boxes. And you can tell they're made because they're rough cut and they don't fit quite right. But I find it exciting that some old timer built this hive, and it can continue to be passed down because they last a long time, So
I would put this in the category of things I would do for myself, but I wouldn't do for you.
Yeah, that's right. That's for sure. So, but there is some small things I think during winter that you can build. If you want to build a horizontal hive, I think that's a very good project to do over winter, because you give it a 2 or 3 weeks to get it built. It's basically making a square. Just take your regular vertical box and, you can set it up and you can get your measurements off of it. It's really not that hard to do. And it takes a little time, but like you said, when you put it out there the first time, and I know I did that with my first time, I'm like, yeah, I built this, and you learn from your mistakes. Yeah. So the next one you build will be that much better. So.
Yeah, that's my problem. You're right. The second one's always better than the first one. So if it takes twice as long to build the first one for some reason.
That's right. That's right. But once you get the hang of building it, it's not that hard. And like you said, I think you mentioned it. You don't have to have a lot of equipment to build a hive. A router will work. Table saw. We do most of our cuts with table saw.
If you have a dado blade, you might not even need a router, right?
Yeah, we don't even use the dado blade. We just, slice those out, and we actually use the leftover scraps to make our inner covers with. So, you can really build something really nice with just a very minimum of equipment. It don't take that much. So,
and then you'll have all these scraps laying around. You'll realize, well, well, there's my next entrance reducer, or there's my next
Yeah.
the skateboard or whatever, right? Because you're gonna have pieces left over that you'll find a use for.
Yeah, and I tell my viewers out there, I mean, really a 2 by 12 foot is what you need for your horizontal size and everything. A 2 by 8 will do your top. Okay, by 10, it'll do your top, and one sheet of plyboard that will build you a horizontal hive. Now you'll have to buy your sheet metal or put shingles or something like that on. I like sheet metal versus shingles because those, all that heat's not going in there. But that's not that much. And I know prices have gone up. I think when I first built mine, I could do it like $80. You might not get away with $80 now. So, but it's a lot of fun to build one. So.
It is, and I think it made me appreciate the bee space, especially, right? So you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And and then once you build your first, and then you can build something really kind of crazy. I think Lee brought my page up here, but you can really go crazy with your hive and build several different varieties of the hive. You can put a flow hive in it. You can put the tops that open up. You can put the nukes in there. So there's just a lot of fun changing the design with the hive. So start with something simple, probably the first time, and you can that base there. You can use that base and change that top later on to a different kind of top. So that's what I like about the horizontal hives.
Do you think shingles would be too heavy? Because that's why I've got extra shingles laying around that I don't need, and I thought, well, that'd be a use for me. But then I started thinking, is that going to be too heavy to lift the lid?
It might. My problem with shingles is they absorb heat, and it's driving that heat down into your hive. So if I was to put shingles, I'd probably put some kind of foam core in there just to keep that heat from transferring down into your bees. But there is a gentleman, I think he's in Virginia. He's a horizontal hive builder, and he uses shingles on all of his hives that he sells. So it must work because he sells a lot of them. So
yeah, that's one of those things. The first time you tried to bend that metal around the corners, that's where it helps to know you're going to do more than one, because the first one's not going to look good.
I was kind of lucky. I had my uncle's he builds, not furniture, but cabinets. And so he knew a guy that worked at a gas place. They did glass, and they had a metal brake. And when we first started out, we was breaking our metal there until we bought our own. So of course, a metal brake helps a lot. So
I got a sign in my shop that says, "Never start a project that doesn't require new tools." So
okay.
There we go. The brakes, the benders, all that stuff's helpful.
But you can do it without it.
Yeah, you can do it without it. Yeah, I mean, yeah. What people don't understand, like on the ends of the hives, all I'm doing is taking a couple of clamps, and I'm just rolling that metal over by hand and just rolling it over, and just cut your ends and tuck it in and nail it on. It'll still turn out right. So all it takes is a good clean edge with a couple of clamps to roll that metal over, and it's not that hard to do. So
yeah, I set up since I don't have a metal brake, I set up I set a little jig with 2 different 2x4s and some clamps and a dead blow hammer, and eventually it got to a pretty clean break.
Yeah.
And the third or fourth time, my corners don't look as good as yours, but they were good enough for me.
They was good. That's right. And it's your first time, right? So the next time you do it, it's going to be a whole lot prettier and a whole lot better, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. I'm going to talk a little bit about some. Wait, before I do that, has anybody got any questions in the live chat for Ken before I move on to some other stuff? Anybody got any questions for him?
You'll have to give it a minute.
Yeah. Ken, I do appreciate you coming on tonight, and Spanky, I appreciate you coming and co-hosting with us. It helps having an extra person asking questions, and Ken, you've been a great friend, and I'm enjoying being with the Ashe County Bee Association, and we've all come a long ways here in Ashe County with our bee association. It's really growing.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's Todd Swanson on here tonight talking about a Clemson shirt. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Ricky is he's a big man in town when it comes to bees. If there's a swarm involved, Ricky's not far behind.
I do get very excited. It's like fishing almost. When there's a swarm out there, I'm like a man tearing to get to it. I just love it. So when I get a call or when Wayne calls me up and says, "Hey, we got a swarm somewhere," man, I'm all over it. So, or a cutout. I just like seeing the bees in a different scenario, and it's a lot like fishing. I want to catch a big swarm, or I want to do a big cutout. So it's a lot of fun.
I don't know if you've talked about it on your channel in the past, but I think it's interesting how you're trying to take those observations that you have when you go capture some bees out of someone's chimney or the side of their house, how you're trying to take that information and apply it to how you build your hives. I think that's smart. That's cool too.
Well, the bees tell us what they really, really want, right? And we manipulate them with our boxes and stuff. But if you really get into wanting to know what the bees want, it's a lot of fun watching the cutout, because a lot of times, I always think the comb's running like this, but really the bees want that comb like this. So when they go in, there's a blocker there almost, which I think is really cool. A lot of times there's two of those there. So you learn, well, why do they do that? Is that for winter time so the cold air don't blow through that hive? I don't know, but the more I do cutouts, the more that I see, it's like, maybe I need to change my design just a little bit, So
I tell you, Ricky, when I first started reading all these books about beekeeping, one of the things that amazed me is that people dedicated so much of their time to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
And in essence, you're like what do they call it? Like a citizen scientist kind of person, where you're trying to figure out why they do what they do, which is, I mean, you're just a small part of the accumulation of knowledge that all these people have put together over the years which is how we know what we do today.
Yeah. And you know as well as I do up here, we don't have a lot of cutouts because it's so cold up here. The bees don't overwinter good without being in a regular box. So it's really nice to see a hive that actually is surviving in the wild or in somebody's house, and getting to some of that knowledge. And I do keep a log. I think it's really cool. We do mite washes on those when we do the cutouts. Where's the entrance positioned at? How big is the entrance? And it's usually about 2 inches, maybe at max. So that information really starts to come in because, I think most people want a big entrance, but really the bees don't want that big entrance. Maybe it's a little small entrance. So I think later on down the road, that'll help my hive building because of that information I'm pulling here in Ashe County. So, I'm excited.
But practical experience, you know that it is that way, right?
Exactly. So, well, let's get over into some other things I'd like to talk to you guys about. And again, it goes back to, I really enjoy being around beekeepers. So there's some upcoming places we're going to be at. We're going to be at the Bee Expo coming up. We're going to be in Virginia in March. So as we're headed to that trip, if you're kind of in Virginia, I like stopping in and seeing people. It gives me a break while I'm driving. So if you're in Virginia as we're headed up, just send me a message here, or
You need permission from your wife.
Oh, my wife just walked in and says I need permission from her. But
where's it at in Virginia?
Do what?
Where's it at in Virginia?
Where was that, Matt? Lynn's, I don't know. I'll post it next week and let everybody know exactly which direction that we're headed. But we do lots of trips to, we go to Ohio. I've seen Brian a few times down here at Castle Hives in Ohio. We go to Florida sometimes, Texas and Tennessee. So I'm going to start letting people know which directions we're going so that, we can stop in and see more beekeepers and talk to people, because I just enjoy talking to beekeepers.
Can you buy me a Starbucks?
I'm not buying you no more Starbucks. Every time we go buy Starbucks, hey, it's a Starbucks. Oh, yeah, here. You see what Brian said?
No. I don't have my glasses.
It says, your Kiro Taco Bell? Oh man, Brian, you're getting a look, brother.
That
Brian.
sinful bale.
Oh, yeah, look at that look. Yeah, she's taking her hair down too. That's a bad sign, man. That's a real bad sign. So, but we're also going to be in Tennessee coming up. Let me pull it up here on my phone.
Say something. Um,
Louisiana on the way to West Virginia. To Virginia.
No, last time I was in Louisiana, I end up in the ER.
Yeah, we don't know why that happened. Let's see here. So we're going to be in Tennessee coming up. Cayman Reynolds has confirmed that he's going to be at this conference. This is with the Davy Crockett bees in Tennessee. I'll post this next week on or not next week, 2 weeks from now on our live chat. It's at Towering Oaks Baptist Church. We've been asked to be a vendor there. And that's in, they said that was in August. And then we're also going to be in Tennessee with this same group in March, the 1st and 2nd, being a vendor there. We're also probably going to end up being a vendor in North Carolina coming up and maybe South Carolina coming up. It's hard for me to get to all these conferences. It takes a lot of time, a lot of equipment, and we're still trying to build our shop here. So we're going to be in certain places. And again, if you're that way, we'd like to stop in and see you. And then we also have, let's see, next week, we have Joseph, not next week, 2 weeks from now on the 14th, we have Joseph Rollins as our special guest coming to speak. So he, he'll be with us here in 2 weeks. I think that's the 14th of December. And then I've also talked about the Bee Expo, about we're all going to go out to eat on Wednesday night. So anybody that wants to come out to eat with us on Wednesday night, I'd love to have you come out. We're going to pick a place maybe big enough that a big group can get together on Wednesday night and be with us. So, but I'd also like to do a draw, and I'm going to pay for 2 people's dinner to come out and be with us. So if you're going to be at the Bee Expo on Wednesday night before Thursday, before the conference starts, we'd be glad to have you to come out and be with us, and maybe you'll win a couple free tickets to for a free dinner. So appreciate everybody tonight. I do.
Let me show Brian his Taco Bell.
Oh boy, Brian.
Boy, that sinful bale.
That's the belly of the cow and a little bit of tongue.
You see that, Brian?
That's real Mexican food.
Folks, we will not be eating tongue and belly at the Bee Expo. Okay, I promise you, I won't do that to you. Okay. But I do appreciate Ken. Thank you so much for coming and being with us, sir.
Welcome.
Yeah, and you know, all your knowledge and the things you do for the Bee Association, Trash County. I do appreciate that. And Spanky, I appreciate you, brother, for co-hosting, and Lee for being in the background and helping with this pictures and stuff. Because I'm not good with computers at all. So, but Spanky, you got anything before we take off tonight?
What was that? Hive design called again? Lazutin? Or
Yeah, I think. Let's see. I don't know if I can get it up here on my notes. Yeah, right in here somewhere. Oops.
Yeah, I've not heard of that before.
Yeah.
I looked it up, and I saw those double deep frames. It reminds me of it's similar to what Vino Farms did with his bee barns.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Only
I did watch him a lot too. Yeah, it is very similar.
He didn't use 2 deeps. He used a deep and I think a medium. And he was looking to get those frames manufactured, mass produced, and sold. So if he gets that done, that'd be one less thing you'd have to have a hard time tracking down for that design.
Yeah, I kind of
he's
like
another
it.
one I would call a citizen scientist. He does a lot of experimenting.
Yes, he does. I like that design actually. It's different, you know, and you got that brood nest, and then you're just kind of building on top of that. So, yeah, Charlie, if you're there Wednesday for the Bee Expo, just we'll get Lee to send you a message if you want to come out and eat with us. We'd be glad to have you. So, all right, guys, we're gonna get out of here, and we appreciate everybody coming on the live chat tonight. In 2 weeks, we'll come back on with Joseph Rollins. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky.
God bless.